Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here. We got Mr. Dane in the house. So guys, we had to click record because we were sharing too much good stuff ahead of time. Really happy to have you here, sir.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amber, so much for the introduction. If you don't know Amber, she's probably the most badass CEO I've ever met my entire life. Every time we talk, I learn something more. So thank you, Amber. Yeah. But Dane, what I like to do with my guests is kind of let them start their story where they want to, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm here to mostly talk about dreams, and obviously wherever the conversation goes. But I got my work start at Cutco Cutlery, vector marketing. I was a knife guy, still am, and did that job right out of high school. Paid my way through University of Wisconsin-Madison doing that. Loved the culture, loved that's kind of the first place I was exposed to personal growth. And so it was, for me, it was a great mixture of entrepreneurship. I had great mentors there. I loved the competitiveness. So I stayed with it as a career position when I graduated. And Cutco's got somewhat of a kind of like a franchise model. So when I graduated from college, I opened up my own office as a district manager. Did that for about 2.5 years in southeastern Wisconsin, and then moved up the ranks. Got the opportunity to run a little larger territory in Omaha, Nebraska, and then had a lateral move up to the Twin Cities, which is where I'm at now. So I'm a division manager with Cutco, so I oversee basically anything Cutco related for Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and most of Iowa. So the dreams concept. So I love that. I do a lot of teaching, sales training, opening new offices. There's a lot of different hats, which keeps my role exciting on a regular basis and constantly shifting. Then the dreams thing, this actually started. Cutco has awesome conferences. They're somewhat like personal growth events. And in 2007, they paid a keynote speaker, Matthew Kelly, to come in. And Matthew Kelly wrote the book, The Dream Manager. And he took us through this awesome exercise of creating a dreams list right at the conference. And so I remember typing away on my computer and created my first ever dreams list. I had a ton of energy from it. So it was just things that I'd want to do and maybe had thought of, but getting it down on paper. And I don't think that concept is too foreign to many of the people that probably are listening to this podcast. But so it was neat to have it all on a list, and then went home, brought that to my team. Everybody's really excited for about 2-3 weeks. And then I never looked at it for the remainder of that year, the year after. It's about 5 years. And I do this thing when I used to anyways, when I'm, basically retiring a computer and buying a new one, I'll save the hard drive. And so I was going back, or I'll take it and put it on an external hard drive so I can access that stuff. And so when I had the opportunity to move again, I was essentially kind of starting from scratch, my third, franchise or territory or team with Cutco. And so I was way more intentional about the culture that I wanted to set up. And so I was going through a lot of my old material, my old notes, to figure out like what was the culture that was going to be the winning one for me to build in that area. And I had moved around knowing that those places were temporary for me, and I wanted to get to a larger market like the Twin Cities. And so I kind of viewed that as my last move. And so I settled on the dreams concept from Matthew Kelly. So I dove back into my list, brought that to my then girlfriend, my now wife. And when I moved up to the Twin Cities at the end of 2012, we kind of coined the new team name, North Star Dream Team. And we've been running with that thing ever since. So it's been, I think we're going on 9 years of implementing dreams into our business culture.
And what's the difference between dreams and goals?
So that's a great question. I think goals, the difference in goals, there's working with a lot of different sales individuals over the years. When I go through goal setting with people, it's so common for people to pick a goal that they know they can hit.
Yeah.
Right. And the purpose of a goal is to stretch. We've got a lot of sayings of, it's not about hitting the goal. It's about who you become in the process. It's, and so when it comes to dreams, when we frame them as dreams, what it allows people to do is it gives them permission to put some wild stuff down, to just say, who knows, maybe this. And when we help them with the list, it's a creation process that's very, abundantly focused of just anything is possible, no restrictions, financially, health, anything else. And so it gives them this opportunity to not look at it as a goal of something that they're going to have to put their name on, but something that they can just have some fun with. And then through that, it kind of allows them to start playing around with bigger ideas.
You said two words there, permission and abundance. And I think permission is the word that keeps coming up in my life, because as adults, we're so focused on the next thing that we should do. And a lot of my clients, when they come to me or they're needing assistance, they're in survival mode. And I've made it very clear to them that you cannot create from survival mode. And not to mention that if you really want me to go off on a tangent, I think goals are bullshit personally, because I think the goals are for other people. And so by what you're setting up for them, you're allowing them to somewhat step out of themselves to create a bigger vision for them that ultimately I think allows them to grow. And what's even more important is that the true definition of the currency in this world these days is growth. And I'm sure you see that in all your franchises that you have.
Yeah.
If they're not growing, they're leaving. It's as simple as that. And so by setting their sights on something maybe bigger and farther along, it keeps them more fulfilled and happy, would you say? Like in pursuit of something?
Yeah. Part of that has to do with, it's the whole, anybody can agree that's like when you've got something in the schedule that you're really looking forward to. Let's just use a trip as an example, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the trip that gives you enjoyment, but it's that anticipation for the month, 2 months, 3 months leading up. So there's just a different energy about you of I know this is coming. There's hey, tonight we're going to do some planning, do some research, look up some epic hikes. Like as we sit here today, my wife bought an Airstream. My wife's got a quick trigger on things. And so we do the dreaming stuff together. Yeah. And I'm, last fall, she's like, I want to get an Airstream. I was like, an Airstream. I'm like, a camper? We don't really camp.
So I don't forget, I'm sorry, because I'm about to screw up your whole life and you're about to need to get another job. Check out a company called Auto Camp. Okay. It's out here in San Francisco, Marin. It's an entire retreat with Airstreams. It's amazing. Top level. They have luxury teepees as well. Really cool.
I'm sure. So it's my wife gutted the whole. She bought a 1976, gutted it. We don't have any experience in that. So she gutted it with just full belief that this thing's going to work out. We booked the timing that we were going to do it, and we're supposed to leave this evening. There's still somebody working on it right now. It's packed. It's loaded.
My kids
are in it. Like I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They're in it right now because they're so excited. So, but over the last couple of months, the anticipation of us booking campsites, looking up different hikes, and it's so the trip has already given us enjoyment. But we haven't even set out on it later today, right? So I think that the anticipation for the people on my team, I would so much rather have somebody really engaged for 2 or 3 years, even if that meant that it was going to lead them to something else, right? Than somebody asleep at the wheel for 4, 5, 6 years. Well, and when somebody is pursuing these, it's like there's always something that's next up, right?
As a leader, you have to be okay with that. You have to understand that we're in a day and age where that's what you get. It's interesting. Somebody said a comment to me. It really struck me. Like, be careful that the guy that's working for your company for 20 years hasn't been living year one for 20 years. Yep. It's like, I'd much rather have them in their prime. Right. Yeah. And it's also, when you think about the labor market that we're experiencing now, like COVID did some, horrible things, but some amazing things to the idea of just forcing every business to figure out how to work differently. And it's, I live in the Twin Cities, and prior to COVID, like the talent in the Twin Cities, the companies were only competing with local companies really for that talent. And now,
they can get poached by somebody in the West Coast, the East Coast, because they don't have to uproot their family. They can stay right there. And so it's very, like, there's got to be something else that businesses are providing now. And I've got kind of a few different arms of the Cutco business. And one of them is our events team. They're our highest producers. They sell Cutco at like fairs and shows, right? So today is, as we record this, is the first day of the Iowa State Fair. And so my team will go down there and they'll sell $400,000 to $500,000 of Cutco at a booth. Well, last year, their business went from booming to nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't lose anybody on my sales professional team. And I was checking in with them during the process. And it was like, hey, how you holding up? And I was expecting tough calls. And, I remember one guy, Robert Wicks, his response was like, oddly, this is great. He's like, I've crossed more things off my dreams list in the last month and a half than I've ever had time to do before. So it's like, it just gave him focus on, well, now I can just live more life right now. And I'll figure out the work piece later. He goes, my favorite one, he goes, I just got done with a dream. I said, what's that? He goes, I just got done flossing for 30 days straight. And I said, that made the list, huh?
Well, what's interesting,
list.
As you're saying this, so last year I was working private equity, and when COVID happened, I got laid off. And then 2 weeks later, I've got divorced. So it was a crazy couple of weeks there. But when I went off, I got in my car and I was supposed to drive to Austin from San Antonio, and I drove to California instead. So things happen. And I started crossing things off my bucket list. I went to the Grand Canyon. I drove up the one. I've always wanted to drive up the one in California, beautiful sun. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing how much fire that lit inside of me. I think that we as adults, one of the things I joke about a lot is that we forgot this three-letter word that's super important that nobody does anymore. It's called fun. And we don't give ourselves permission to play anymore. We don't give ourselves to, it's on to the next business. Well, I don't got the Lamborghini yet, or I need to do this. And I'm just as guilty of that, but I also structure my work where there is time. I typically, lately it's been a little different because business is crazy, but typically I don't work on Fridays. Mm-hmm. And, that's for me. And eventually it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the only thing I work. And that's why, the lifestyle investor and stuff. So if anybody that's out there that's wanting to implement into their life, besides getting the book that's going to be out next month, what are the first steps that they would take to start getting some step-to-step process to build this out?
I think the first thing is just having fun dreaming. So we do this in our workplace, and we facilitate the idea of people creating their big list. But I always call that list, their dreams list, I call it your menu. And, the idea is if hey, let's say that you had a little lull in life, what's going to give you some energy, right? So just like you said, it's like, well, I went and saw this epic, thing in the US known as the Grand Canyon. And then I went and did some, road tripping up the coast. And it's like, those things can bring us energy, give us new ideas, right? It can engage us in a different way than that month to month, week to week, same, I hate to call it the rat race, because I think that means something else, but the same idea of just like on to the next, more. And so for my wife and I, when we did this, not in the work capacity, but when I was moving, I said, if I'm going to implement this into my organization, I've got to be living it out loud, right? In order to make this a win. Yeah. And so I, looked at my girlfriend at the time, she was going to make the move with me. And I said, let's do this. I already had a dreams list from 5 years prior. I took her through all the categories and we just wrote, and I added a bunch more to mine. She made a big list. And then we now do, when we moved, New Year's Eve that year was our first, dreams night, if you will. And what we did on New Year's Eve is we sat through and we looked at our dreams list, we shared them, and we decided on the 6 to 10 things that we were going to try and do in 2013. And it was really cool because it wasn't her saying you should do that. It was me saying, making a declaration, here are the ones that I'm doing this year. And then she said the same. And so she was giving me kind of a cheat sheet of how to support her as her partner for the year, right? To say, these are the things that matter to me most.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a lot of stuff that I didn't necessarily recognize were happening then, right? That now that I look back, we're married, we still do this every year. Yeah. That's really helped our relationship. But we had our credit cards out. I signed up for my my first marathon right there on New Year's Eve. Right. I didn't know necessarily all the stuff I was going to take later, but we took action on it. And then, we had a lot of fun that year, did it again. We do this every year now. We add a few more layers to it, but yeah, I would say just start dreaming, make a list.
Do you know a guy named Aaron Amusastegi?
I think our circles.
Yeah, he's right there. Yeah, he's in Austin with Justin. He said something to me. So his kids are homeschooled. He runs a couple businesses and they travel a bunch. And he said, you know what's interesting about trips? He's like, they don't happen until you schedule them. Mm-hmm. But so many times that we're in life, we put off. And what I try to get people to, especially my clients, is to understand that the things that you enjoyed as a kid are probably very closely tied to how you should operate as an adult.
Totally. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, so what are the aspects? And here's the thing, this is the rub. And we just did a podcast about work-life balance the other day. It doesn't have to make you money, but if it fills you up, that artistic side of you, then it gives you the energy you need to go into your job, whether that's rollerblading or collecting cards or something. We're too focused on the dollar amounts when we need to be focused on energy. What gives you energy? What gives you fulfillment and stuff like that? And when you have that, then you could show up however you want because you're in a better place. It wasn't until I started investing in Airbnbs that my day job I didn't care about. But in the moment when I didn't have the Airbnbs, the day job, I wanted to shoot I hated it. but when I was making money outside of it, I was busy, but I was more fulfilled because I was working towards something. And I think a lot of the times as an adult, we try to force things instead of just like dreaming big, because ultimately at the end of the day, one of the things that I love about kids is that they just dream. I mean, it's like, and your wife says, look, I want an Airstream. This is what we're going to do. And this is great. And now you get to go on this trip. And I'm sure this will be the genesis to many trips moving forward. Yeah. As a husband, you have to support, that's what you want from a partner. You're like, hey, let's do something that lights you up. And if this is the thing, and then guess what, after this, there'll be another thing and so on and so on. I think people try to stammer out others goals or they're not supporting it. You don't have to understand it. You can just support it.
Yep. And and the dreaming thing too, what it's caused for us is just looking at life differently. So for instance, my wife with the Airstream, we're going to do this. We're going to do it now. I'm like, okay. And then she sold me on the idea of look at how much they rent for. So when we fix it up, we can rent it. I was like, all right, now I was like, now I'm in.
Dane, my coaching client, we got lots to talk about. So he's dropping off 2 vans here in the next 3 weeks, and we're renting them out on Outdoorsy. $300, $400 a night. Yeah.
So she showed me that, and I was like, all right, I can get behind it now.
Yeah.
But then we spent a month where I was working remotely in San Diego, and then we swung through Sedona, which is Sedona's my wife and I's favorite place.
It's different. It's just different.
Yeah. And we're in this space right now where it's kind of where do we want to be? And my wife, we moved out of the Twin Cities a couple of years ago, east, 45 minutes to an hour. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And our neighbors had horses. My wife never grew up with horses, started riding. My girls started riding. Lo and behold, I come home one day and she goes, hey, we're buying a horse. We have to buy it. I said, what? Can't you just keep leasing? And she said, well, the woman who has that horse, somebody's going to buy that horse. And I'm in love with the horse. So we need to buy the horse. I was like, all right. So we bought a horse on the day of, right? And then, so we're traveling in San Diego and Sedona. And she goes, next year when we travel for some of the winter, I want to bring the horse with. And I said,
huh?
I'm kind of missing this. So the horse now is just a member of the family and they're coming with, how's this? We don't even have a horse trailer. And she goes, we can figure. And it was immediately when she said it, this practical part of me, which, that's obviously needed, was let me figure out why this makes no sense at all. But my wife, in all of her genius, kept saying, well, why not? And it got me thinking, well, okay, if that literally is going to make it that much of a greater experience for her, is there a way for us to do it? Does it make sense? And so she just, through this process, we are a perfect match for each other in that. Like she gives me the fuel in certain areas that maybe I lack. Right. And that's one of them where it's, don't think about a trip, think about a trip done differently.
I like her already. Yeah. I'm a fan because awesome. One of the interesting things about me is for some reason I'll bitch and moan about $20, but I'll go spend $300K on a house like it's water. Yes. They go, you didn't even walk in. I'm like, it's good. We can make money with it. They're like, I don't understand. I'm like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. And like, it's just this weird dynamic with me where I'm like, oh, big stuff. Yeah. If it makes money, we're good, but it's really one of those things where we have to retrain what makes sense to us, but more importantly, how we view, how we want to live our life. And right. And that's what this whole genesis of this podcast is like the way that you think it needs to be done. It doesn't need to be done at all. Like I start every one of my businesses with, how do I fire myself from this business? And how can I do this business from my phone? That's the number one rules. If those two things can, and I'm in alignment with my business partners and we have the same values and the same mindset, then we're good to go. But it cost me losing a bunch of money in business and lying to myself to try to fill the integrator role or try to fill the day-to-day. It's not me. And I don't think enough people spend enough time dreaming. I don't think enough people spend enough time manifesting, looking at their life, because what I noticed a lot, and I'd be interested to hear your take on just like employees and training people. I think a lot of people just don't have any direction. They don't know where they literally, it's the question I get the most. Like, I just don't even, and here's the scary thing. I'm not unhappy, but I'm just not my best. That's the scary thing. I love my wife. I love my job. We have a house, but they get the money and they go, this is it. And that's about 90% of how the calls go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's, in Cutco, I work with the younger demographic, 18 to 22. And so I get to see it maybe before they make it to you, right?
Yeah.
And I know exactly what it is. And I remember it for me also. It's, at least this is my idea, is that, we go to high school and then we're just told you need to go to college. And then when you get to college, it's like, what's your major? And we're picking a major based on no life experience or very limited life experience. And so we're basing it on what we think we're going to enjoy or what we think maybe we're, what do you value at 18? Probably not the same stuff that you value when you're older. Yeah. I wanted to make a lot of money. So I was thinking, I want to go do this. I want to go do this. And then the first time really experiencing the day-to-day of that stuff is when they graduate and they start getting into that job. And now they're strapped with the student loans and they're in that job. They're making fine money. And it's that like, I'm not unhappy, but I'm not really, showing up, fired up for my day. And I think that's that trap, that in between.
But I think also the thing I've seen lately, especially the last 2 weeks with new clients, is just because you're unfulfilled with your current sector of business, the skills that you have generated over your career can be molded into other business sectors. And I think that's what people don't understand. Hey, I've only sold cars for 25 years. No. You're a great salesman and you can go sell a bunch of stuff. And that's when you have to wake up. It really is about mastering skill sets more than anything.
Yeah. And also, one of the, again, working with younger generation, what I try and help them understand is like, look, nothing's permanent. You're a work in progress. Yeah. And the career that you choose isn't your career. Like, you talk to anybody who's even 40 now and they've shuffled the deck how many times to figure out like, ooh, not this. And so
I'm the poster child. Yeah. Yeah. I've blown up my life like eight times. Yeah. True story. Yeah.
And I think that if there wasn't all this pressure put on a student to say, you need to choose your life's work, it's like, no, just pick something you think you're interested in, but also understand that you're going to learn more about yourself in the process. You're going to learn more about yourself in college.
Yeah.
Right. And so what you thought it was is different. That's okay. And there shouldn't be all this like, I don't know, this anxiety associated with like, if I switching's bad, or if I, it's like, no, all that stuff's great because you learn so much differently.
I love that. And when you began the process of trying to write a book, what did you think it was going to be? And then what did it wind up being? Because, I'm in the midst of one right now. It's a very interesting process.
Yeah. So the whole thing. So my wife is a creative, right, by nature, and she's artistic. She's the poster child also in school of like changing all the time, right? So she's artistic, fashion, writing, all of that. So she took a course, went through this whole process of writing a fiction book, right? So that's like been her last. It's been a section of her adulthood of working on that type of stuff. So for me, I saw that and I was like, hey, I'd love, on my dreams list is write a book. I thought that was probably later as my other, things that demand my time are lower, and my kids are young age, probably not going to happen now. And then, just through conversations, talking to Justin Donald, who just released his book. And then I'm in the Front Row Dads community, which I love.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so there's a bunch of authors in there. So
Mike Higgins?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike's my dude. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many, you could go through so many different guys in that group. And I'm like, yes. They're all great. And so, but having those conversations with people that have done it helped me understand the amount of time that there's also different ways to do it. Like you could just be at your computer by yourself for 3 years, chunking away. You could, hire a service that helps you with the entire process, that their job is to make it more of a streamlined process. So for me, I would say it was less time in than what I thought it would be, which is one of the things that the whole theme of this dreams list is that, like, when people start to put things on paper, you could call it manifestation, you could call it whatever, but people put things on their list and they actually start to do some research. We almost always find out cheaper or faster ways to get things done than what we thought it was going to be. Like I remember putting on my list originally, live on a sailboat for a week. Okay. And in my mind, I'm like, that's going to be an epic trip. That's going to cost $10,000. And we went to Thailand, and my wife knew that was on my list. And she found one off the coast of Thailand, those little islands. And she found a sailboat for $300 a night that we could live on, that had a captain and somebody to cook our meals. And it wasn't like, part of me was like $300 a night. There's going to be like water coming in. There's going to be holes in this thing. It was unbelievable. And so I just think that there's all these, you start to do some research on things and you find out that things can be faster, easier, or maybe less expensive than what we originally thought they'd be.
I love that. And if somebody were to pick up this book, as somebody who put his experience in it, wisdom and years of experience, what are you hoping that at the end of the day, even one person gets out of the book?
Yeah, so the book is written more for a business owner, team leader, somebody in some sort of a leadership position. Okay. And it's meant to be an A to Z guide of how to institute a culture centered around dream achieving, which will increase retention and engagement. And so my goal, my outcome from this is that just one business is able to implement this, because I've seen what it can do for the people in my organization. And it just brings a entirely different flavor to what they do for work. And it can bring excitement to something that maybe they've been doing for a while and has become monotonous. And so kind of what you said before, it's like, it's not, it's the goal here is to just have people be alive on a regular basis. And if that means that and I do this all the time, I help people. I just facilitated one for my personal team this last weekend, and we go through a career category. It's a little tough if they're working for me to say, let's talk about your future career aspirations. Yeah. And so I give them permission in that. I say, look, you're going to have a ton of careers. I have ones that aren't with the business that we're talking about right now. So write down everything, write down some for maybe your time here, but write down some things for other places as well. And I just think that a business, some of the greatest work a business can do is bettering the lives of its employees.
Couldn't agree more. It's the main thing that we focus on as we build our businesses, especially in the hospitality business. While I'm up here in Tahoe, it's what we talk about all the time. But something just came to my mind. And I'm not saying they're always the easiest, but I think there's a lot of rhetoric out in society. I just had this conversation with my coaching client this morning, who's about to build a brokerage franchise model. And we were talking about who we're going to hire and what agents we're going to look for and all this stuff. What do you think is it that's out there because you handle a lot of young kids, what do you think the false narratives are out there about the young kids that people just spout to the rooftops?
I think one is work ethic.
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot around like, they want the get rich quick, get me right to it. And they don't want to work hard. And I can tell you that I've been working with this age group for over 15 years. Same thing was true 15 years ago. They just maybe, it wasn't as prevalently talked about. But I've got so many examples of individuals that we just got done with our largest sales contest. And these students worked their butts off for 17 straight days, no day off. I'd join them. I'd run a Zoom for them at 7 a.m. It's something that they opt in. I say, hey, if you want to do this 17 days all out, sacrifice other things in your life for these 17 days. And here's the reason you want to do it. And, we had 50 or so people that said, yeah, I'd like to go hard at this because I want to learn and grow. The thing that I don't think is talked enough about, so it's kind of almost the opposite of your question, is that the desire for this, call them 18 to 22-year-old right now, their desire for wanting to grow themselves is far different than 15 years ago. And so, I think this thing that I do with the dreams thing, I think it would have worked 15 years ago, but I think that it is a whole nother level now because it gives them a destination for their growth.
Yeah.
Instead of just let me grow to grow, it's I'm growing to achieve these things in my life.
The number one thing in business, I just said this to my client yesterday. If your employees, yourself, or whatever cannot see from A to B, it doesn't exist. Meaning, if you're going to go raise a fund, like he's a nurse, and the nurses are looking for a way for passive income, the doctors are looking for a way. There's an A to B. The problem is we're creating something without understanding what the A to B is, but more importantly, we're creating something thinking that people are just going to get it instead of actually, one of the things that are interesting, one of my favorite quotes in the world is Jim Rohn says, what the top 1% do that the others don't do? They ask. Just ask. Open your damn ears and ask your employees what they want, and then create a culture predicated on growth. Know that some are going to leave, some are going to stay. But the only reason people work for me is because they're growing, and we're going to focus on that. Are they going to do their job? Yeah, they're going to do their job because they're bought into me. I'm sure the same way they're bought into you as a leader, right? I bet you they're 100% bought in to how you make them feel and what you represent to them. And I think that's why you have such a successful business.
What I hear a lot is from them is that when you say bought in, absolutely. What they're bought into though is the way that I live, and I do it out loud, right? But I dream regularly with my wife, with my kids, and they want to have families. Like this age group still is, that doesn't change. Like they still they aspire to have families. And a lot of them, from what I hear, they're saying that they want that balance, right? So they're not afraid of hard work, but they do want that balance as well. And
it's very easy for you to live your personal brand because you live it. I mean, and I'm on the road and I live it. And so, and it's weird thing as a coach and as a leader, if I'm not, then I can't coach if I'm not living what I'm speaking. And it's kind of this, I don't have a choice. And it's kind of this interesting, dichotomy of social accountability that I didn't even know I was getting myself into.
Yeah. And, I think that there's a lot in the financial sector with some of that, right? Of who are you getting your advice from? Don't, show me what you've done instead of tell me what to do type of deal. But when it comes to with the dreams concept too, I remember when I made the decision to say, I'm going to live this out loud, there were some hesitations that I had of well, how much do I want to be shouting from the rooftops of this trip that I just took if I know that it costs a lot of money and I know that I'm in a different financial situation than the people that are on my team? Or do I want to talk about how I took 10 days off when maybe they don't have the same availability and I had to kind of get over it. Some of that was ego. And I had to think back to, hey, when I was 18, 19, 20, if my mid 30s boss was talking about a trip that he took, I wouldn't be resentful. I'd be, hey, that's really cool. I hope someday as I'm progressing that I have the opportunity to do those things as well. And, I think that the old idea of a, CEO, a founder, an individual who's running a team working 100 hours a week, like that doesn't attract a lot of A players, right? And it's going to encourage burnout, but it doesn't attract that person who's going to be excited about winning here at work and then also winning with their home.
I just kind of had a little breakthrough myself when you were talking there for a minute, because I was thinking back to when I was 18 and I was looking at my bosses, and they were working the 100 hours and they were miserable and they drank too much and they didn't have great marriages. And so why would I want to aspire to that? And so now it makes a lot more sense to me why people do want to be around me, and probably you, because they're like, I can get behind that shit. Like you live in Tahoe and you get to have fun and you work out. Like, And so that's an interesting perspective. I didn't think about that. Yeah. That's super cool. So this is a selfish question. You traveled a lot. I see. What is your favorite? I know this is really hard, but what's your favorite spot, you think? Top
international or
so the long-term goal for me is to probably retire in Tuscany or Croatia or something like that. So yeah, international.
So we've only been to Southeast Asia once, and it was to Thailand, and it was a totally different trip than Europe trips. So I would say that's up there. If I had to say 3 international locations, I'd say there. Costa Rica.
Yeah,
that's always.
I've been 5 times. Yeah, my coach is there. Yeah,
so we love there. And then the other one for us would probably be Spain.
Yeah. So my branding website builder lives in Spain. He used to be the lead in Cirque du Soleil for 10 years. And
wow.
And he's one of the best humans I know. And we're the goal for the company that him and I are kind of coaching people together on is we want to buy a retreat ranch in Spain to do like yoga retreats and masterminds and stuff. And he's like, you get behind that? And I was like, yeah, dude, whatever. Yes.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And if you need to know of any estates and castles that are for sale, my wife can tell you, because she constantly is online looking at
dude. Okay. First of all, me and your wife have to hang out, and I apologize ahead of time because you need to start a new business because I'll get her going, dude. My main specialty is short-term rentals. So I've done them all over the country, luxury, all the above. We're doing hotels now. So this will be the 3rd hotel, and man, it's, that's what I do. It's like, so give her this dream. This is my new one. I came up with this one yesterday. So I want 4 homes.
Okay.
And I want the same car, the same clothes, the same boats at all homes. So all I travel with is a backpack.
Yes. And you show up and you have all your same comforts. It's the same. Yeah. I love that.
And it's like a triggering of foundation because you're used to it, like different golf, same golf clubs, all this stuff. But and like, what's funny is I said that, and my business partner goes, I just heard that on a podcast from this guy named Mark Evans. And he was like, yeah, I do that same thing because I feel comfortable. And it's not like I'm on vacation. It's like I'm on home.
There's a lot to that, because I think about when I travel and try and work remote, it's like, you're just out of your routine.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not, even though you're working, you're not channeling the same type of work maybe that you're used to.
Yeah. Because then you're truly living that lifestyle, and you're rooted in like the routine, because it's the same, hey, I know where this goes and everything. And like, like how hard is it to find a gym on vacation? And it's like, like that whole thing. And so, if people want the book's coming out next month, how would they go about finding it? How would they go about learning more about you?
So my website is just daneespegard.com. Last name is Espegard. And then on Instagram, everything's going to be on there as well. It's just Dane Espegard. But the website, there'll be a lot of stuff that's on there as well. And one of the things that we're doing for like the launch specials of purchasing, buying 3 books and somebody's able to get a free ticket to the Online Dreams Workshop. Because that's a question I get a lot is, well, how do I just make the dreams list?
So I'm buying 10. So,
okay. Wonderful.
So I'll give those out to some business owners. So
And so the idea is they can come with their spouse and do their first ever dreams list
awesome.
During that process. Because I think
that would be amazing.
That gives people the idea of like, oh, this is cool, and now they can take that and live with it at home.
I love that. And this falls in line with getting to a place, and I can tell the circle that you roll around in, and if all those names that he dropped, guys, if you don't know them, you need to know them. I think, and I'm not there by any stretch of the imagination, but I think when you start making real money, or you start, really generating really massive amounts of passive income, and this is hard for people to understand, it's really not about the money anymore. It's about, who do I want to do business with? How do I want to do it? Where do I want to do it? And are we happy? I know it sounds counterintuitive, but when you can tap into all those things, then you actually start making more money. That's the scary thing. That's what people don't get.
And the front row dads community is so phenomenal for that, because when I'm at that thing, that's like, I tell my wife when I come back from those retreats, I'm like, that's when I feel lowest about myself all year. Not in a bad way, but I'm around these guys and I'm like, geez, they're thinking differently about relationships with their kids, education, things with their significant other. And I always come back like, not down, but just a whole list of, man, I got to be asking different questions. I've got to be, and there's always the topic is not business. Oh, but in a way there's a portion of the conversation that is business, because that allows us to have that time, freedom, flexibility, autonomy, right? Resources to be able to make decisions differently.
Do you happen to know a gentleman named Matt Atkinson? Matty A?
I don't recognize that.
So he's in GoBundance. He's the guy that owns the hotels out here. Okay. One of my mentors, one of my friends. We've known each other for about 2.5 years. I could say that we've had thousands of conversations. I would say we talk about business 7% of the time, maybe 10. It's like, awesome. It's so odd, and like people think it's like, no, like you're getting in there and like. When you start changing the way that you think, you realize that real estate and business, although it is demanding, is not really that hard when you break it down. It's more about, is your mind right to handle that there's always going to be problems? Yep. That's a guaranteed. But with leverage of people and leverage of mindset, you can kind of supplement that. But man, I appreciate it so much. Such an amazing conversation, guys. Run out, go grab his book. Trust me, he wouldn't come recommended if the book wasn't amazing. Yeah. Share this with your friends. Rate us and review us, and we'll see you next time, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.